Imagine, a podcast series by Imagine Theatre.
Hello again, I'm Martin Ballard and welcome to episode 73 of this podcast series, and this time we're going to be meeting the actor who is celebrating his 30th panto season this year.
For more information, go to their website at www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.
Now, in the last episode, we chatted about Beauty and the Beast and the latest in our occasional series looking at the most popular pantomime titles. That and all of the other previous episodes are all still available wherever you usually get your podcasts, and there are many more to come from one of the UK's biggest producers of pantomime and children's theatre. And don't forget, if you have any questions about Imagine Theatre or pantomime in general, send them in using the Get in Touch section of the website at imaginetheatre.co.uk, and we'll answer one of your questions later on in this episode. Now, this time I've been joined by the actor who will mark his 30th year in panto and his 25th at the Swansea Grand this Christmas in Jack and the Beanstalk. Now, although he's best known for his starring roles in the panto, he's also played leading roles with other theatre companies, been a radio presenter and the matchday announcer for Swansea City. He is Kev Johns MBE. How are you?
I'm all right. Come on, us Swans. I can't believe it's taken you 70-odd podcasts before we've talked.
I know, you've been avoiding us, I reckon.
My luck ran out.
Well, our luck is definitely in to have you here now. And again, I mentioned at the very beginning, you've done so many different things, from football to acting, broadcasting to chaplaincy. And I want to start with that if we can, because, of course, originally you went to Bible college.
I did. I always wanted to be an actor. I didn't have anything else in my thinking. And then I felt that a change was coming, and that I'd always had a very strong personal faith, but I felt that I would really like to serve in the ministry. So I went to Bible college in London, and after my first year I thought, no, I'm struggling. So I went on tour for a while, and then I went back to do the same course, but I went to a different college where I met my wife, and from there I went to the ministry. And I was a church minister just outside Toxteth in Liverpool and in North Wales, and then I had an itinerant role using for the denomination, using comedy and magic to kind of share my faith. And that's kind of how I got back to where I am today.
And when did Clown Kev come in then?
That's a name I've not heard for a long time. I was working in that year in between colleges, I was working as a stage manager at a variety venue in Swansea, the Patty Pavilion, and the shows, we were struggling. It was a lovely summer, so the head of entertainment said, "Kev, do us a favour, go out, take some leaflets." He said, "Dress up, go on." So I put a clown costume on, and I was working a group, just messing about with a balloon, and a guy asked me. He said, "Oh, do you do this for a living?" And you know yourself, I got horse riding on my CV. I couldn't ride a horse, but I'd learn. And I said, "Yeah, of course I did." And I got my first job then entertaining tourists by the Mumbles Pier on a Saturday night. And my first fee was £25. It grew from there, and it kind of then, through my second and third year, it funded me through college. And I used it within the church setting. And then I started doing summer seasons once again, once I'd moved back to Swansea, my wife and I, and Christmas shows. And the head of entertainment at then Bridgend area said, we want you to do pantomime as yourself. And I'd started doing panto at the Grand Pavilion in Porthcawl. And the director there, a wonderful man called Norman Robbins, who wrote books about pantomime, sadly no longer with us. He was our dame and our director and our writer, and he said, you should play Bottom in Shakespeare. And I said, no, it's not for me. And eventually, I did. It wasn't my first Shakespearean role, but I did get to play Bottom. He was right.
Well, all the jokes are still there. People still talk about your bottom, allegedly.
It was a fine bottom,
So, along the way, you began broadcasting, and telling me that you did the breakfast show in Swansea for 25 years.
I did. I started off at doing some shows for BBC Radio Wales, and then went to Swansea Sound, which was the commercial station for Swansea, one of the oldest commercial stations in the UK. And I went there just to do a family show on a Saturday morning, and then I started doing a gospel music program on a Sunday, and then started doing overnights, and then I eventually got to do the mid-morning show, and then I went to breakfast, and I did that show for 25 years.
Do you still wake up at 3 a.m?
Yeah, I think, I can go back to sleep now. I think, that's really cool. And, I realised how kind of tough it was after it finished. Doing not just pantomime, but doing events. I tend to do. I'm very blessed to be able to do a lot of corporate and awards events. And you come out of a place near Northampton at 11 o'clock at night. You have to drive home and get up and to be in work by 5 a.m. And I'm just glad I don't have to do that anymore. I can stay the night and when we do pantomime, pantomime, as you know, is quite a social gathering. People like to mix and socialise afterwards. And whilst I don't do that every night, I'm now able to do that and not worry about getting up in the mornings. Which, whilst you kind of I miss the audience, I miss the people. But I don't miss the hours.
Well, I mean, that's something I can certainly relate to. But I cannot believe that for all those years, while you were presenting the breakfast show and getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning, you were doing 2, maybe sometimes 3 panto performances a day as well.
Yeah, but I love what I do, and it's not. I always say it's not hard work. My dad was my late dad, he drove a petrol tanker for BP and would drive all over the country delivering fuel to petrol stations, to hospitals and to factories. And that was hard work, and putting on a bit of makeup and working a crowd that you love doing. It's tiring, yes, but it's not hard work, and there's always a settee in the dressing room where you can sit down and close your eyes for 5 minutes.
When people said that to me, I always used to say that they are two very different worlds. Radio is a very personal one-to-one situation,
absolutely,
which is perhaps mentally challenging in some ways. Panto is a big gathering, a social gathering, where it's perhaps more physically demanding. So that in a strange way, they complement each other.
Yeah, it is, and radio was very much a solo activity. You'd see that there would be 2 stations, so you'd see the guys in the room next door, and a journalist would come in to read the news once an hour, and then when you're on that time of the morning, you're the only ones in the building, and then half a state the rest of the team, the sales reps and the admin people come in, and they go upstairs, and sometimes you don't have a conversation physically with somebody until after 10 o'clock and when it's time to go home, But I loved the relationship I had with the audience. And you're right, you do picture in your mind who you're talking to, and it's an individual at home, in the car, or maybe a couple of folks listening in the office or in the shop or in the workplace. But it is very much a personal one-to-one medium, and I think that's what drew me to it.
I said you deserve an award for 25 years on the breakfast show. I have to say your family probably deserve an award as well. You're coming up to your 40th wedding anniversary in a couple of years. Rosie and the kids, I mean, the kids are grown up now, of course, but they've supported you all the way, haven't they?
Yes, I wanted, when you get to a point where you can take money out of your pension fund, even though you're not retiring, and I wanted to take something out for them, because I wanted to share that with them, because they had made sacrifices. Quite often I would be working on a bank holiday and not just doing the radio show. Then I may be rushing off to do something else. Maybe the Swans would be home that day, or other bank holidays there would be a big event on that would need hosting, and I wanted them to say, look, this whole thing is yours as well. And I've tried to include them in everything I do. Of course, my daughter, she went to drama school and she became an actress, so she understands the business, and but it doesn't make it easier when you're a child and you want to go to the seaside or you want to go here, and Dad's working.
Well, let's talk about the other thing, and the uncanny thing about our careers is there are so many similarities because, I worked for the BBC in radio for 37 years. You've worked in radio. We've both done panto, Dame in particular, for all that time, and we're both stadium announcers.
Really? Where are you?
I'm a rugby man, so I'm the stadium announcer for Leicester Tigers and have been for the last 20 years.
Big club.
You at Swansea, of course, and I really don't know. I mean, looking at you doing the breakfast show, doing all of this stuff in panto, and being a stadium announcer, how do you fit all that in?
Well, I'd be at the football anyway, so it's a blessing that I go down there early. So I get a parking place in the car park, and I go in and I host some hospitality, and then I go out and work the crowd pre-match and during half-time, and then I come back in and I do some more hospitality interviews, and by the time I'm finished, all the car park's cleared and it's easy to get out, so but I'd be at the football anyway. I was a season ticket holder, a lifelong Swansea City supporter. Before they asked me would I do what I do, I was working with on the Coca-Cola Cup promotion, which then became the Worthington Cup. So I was working all over the country, and I was at Wembley during one of the cup finals, doing some stuff at halftime, and it just got mentioned in the local paper. I don't know why, and the Swans rang me up and said, "Why don't you do it for us?" And they said, "Well, you've never asked." And they asked, so I've done it ever since.
I mean, all of these are labours of love. That's the key thing, and that's what keeps you going in a way. But let's talk about panto. For a start, do you remember going to see panto as a kid?
Oh, I do. I used to go to the Grand Theatre, and I particularly remember those pantomimes in the 1970s where Welsh legend Ryan Davies was the star. And I probably think that it was watching Ryan and listening to his recorded shows and watching him on television that made me want to be a performer. And Ryan was an all-rounder. He was a comedian, he was a great singer, he was a great musician, he was a great conductor and a great writer. He was everything, and sadly was taken away from us way too young. He passed away in 1977, just after pantomime. He'd gone with his family, who I got to know and love. He went to America and he passed away in the States suddenly and tragically. And we in this year's pantomime we did a song. My first song was "Welcome to our pantomime. We hope you have a lovely time. Eat your sweets and chocolates and drink your fizzy pop." And that was a Ryan Davies song, which he used to do at the beginning of panto. And when we were working on the script, Imagine brought in a fella called Nigel Ellicott, who's an incredibly well-known pantomime dame, and Nigel's a Swansea boy. So they brought in Nigel to help Swansea-fy the script and to make sure, bless them, that I was okay and I was happy with everything. And Nigel and I were having conversations like this, and we'd be on the phone, the laptops would be in front of us. We put that in as a little tribute to Ryan, to say that he wasn't forgotten. And it was lovely. And do you know what? I wasn't sure how it would go down because it is very much of the 1970s, but the audience loved it. It was possibly one of the best things they've ever done in panto. And these past 2 years in a panto career, I've done 30 years in panto. 25 of those have been at the Grand, and these last 2 years have been without doubt the best. They've been outstanding shows. And last year the show was awarded the best panto in large theatres in the UK.
Quite rightly too. When you were a kid, do you remember how old you would have been when you saw your first pantomime and what really struck you about it?
I can remember seeing Charles Hawtrey in panto, and Jess Conrad. I reminded Jess, I played for his celebrity football team some years ago, and I reminded him, and he looked at me and he wasn't happy that I remembered him as a child watching panto. But yeah, and pantomime's changed over the years, and it's kept up with the times, and we can't be too reminiscent and too nostalgic, because what's past is past. And it's to the theatre, it's of great commercial value, because the money that comes in during panto helps fund that theatre for weeks and for months afterwards. And this year we performed to well over 30,000 people, and that's some achievement in what is still a regional theatre.
There have been lots of changes in pantomime. Every few years we see changes, trends, and so on. But the great thing about it is that it evolves. There's no revolution; it's evolution.
Absolutely.
And as it evolves, there are still nods to the past. There are still themes and threads of the history of the genre, aren't there?
Oh yes, and some of the younger and newer directors, they amaze me. And you do a gag, and he likes it, and then we do the gag again, and we do the gag again. You say, no, you've done that twice this year. I said, let me explain the rule of three to you, and they don't know what the rule of three is. And I said, well, this is the rule of three, because what's happening now? There was a time where most pantomime directors had been pantomime performers, but now pantomime is of such an appeal and commercially viable that there are guys coming in who are directors. I remember being directed by Kerry, a guy called Kerry Michael. Kerry went on to be artistic director at Stratford Theatre East, which is one of the prestigious outside of West End theatres in the country, and Kerry was a brilliant director, but not a pantomime director.
You obviously have played Dame for a long time, but that first panto you mentioned in Porth Call, you were wishy-washy, weren't you?
Yeah, I was wishy-washy, and I played that type of role until I was too old to fall in love with the girl. It was my second pantomime at Swansea Grand, and I played the Emperor of China with Andrew Linford, who became a great friend, and I've worked with Andrew in plays and been directed by him in panto, and Rhea Jones, who I'd known for most of our life. And I played the Emperor of China, and at the end, when the producers came to visit, a guy called Paul Elliott, who was his name is synonymous with theatre and pantomime, Paul knocked on my dressing room door, and I opened the door, and all he said was, Dame next year, and off he went. And I've kind of been Dame ever since, and I love it.
So what do you love about it specifically? What do you love about panto?
I love the audience, and I love the makeup of the audience. I love it that the generations of the same family feel they can come together and watch the show. So you'll get great-grandparents, grandparents, mothers, fathers, and children all come together, and they tell you when they come in they have a traditional performance that they like to come to, whether it's opening night or it's last day or whether it's Christmas Eve or whether it's Boxing Day or New Year's Eve. They always come on the same day, and it introduces children to theatre. And if you can create magic for those youngsters, then they'll want to come again, and they'll hopefully their families will pick up a brochure, and they'll see that there's an Easter pantomime coming, or there's a children's tour coming, and they'll want to see that. And my own grandson, he saw his first panto, not the panto season that just passed, but last year. He came at the age of 3, and in between we took him to see a dinosaur show. Here's Dougie, the tiger who came to tea, and we took him to see all those shows. And he came this year to pantomime at 4, and he came up on the stage for the song sheet, But it's creating magic that will make kids want to go and sit through a show again. And I love Dame Trot. I love Widow Twankey, because life hasn't been kind to those two girls. They've had 4 marriages and lost 4 husbands, and it's just such a lovely character to play. And particularly in Wales, I tend to pick a Welsh mam character and play it like some of the grannies of Wales.
It's interesting that, talking about your love of bringing kids into the theatre, I'm reminded that all the things that you've done, whether that be as a chaplain or a radio presenter or an announcer or a panto dame, it's all about shared experience. It's about socialisation, social gatherings and so on. I think it's clear to me anyway that the arts in general and pantomime in particular are good for the human soul, aren't they?
Oh yeah, and do you know what, after COVID, people just wanted to come out, Our first pantomime after COVID unfortunately had to close on Christmas Eve because the Welsh government made that decision. not a critic of that decision, disappointed that it was just Wales and Scotland that were included in those decisions. But then last year, people were able to come out and they were able to leave their face masks at home, and we were able to go out for meals together and go into the bar after the show together. And it's so lovely to see people now once again coming out and enjoying themselves. And this year, we never had a quiet audience. Every audience was a good, strong audience. I think we broke box office records for the second year in succession. And for me, working my hometown theatre, in a theatre that I grew up in, and having my name on my face and name on the poster, that I was so proud of our company. I was so proud of Imagine. I was so proud of the Swansea Grand and the team there. They deserve all the success they get.
So we talked about pantomime and the themes of pantomime. You know, they will have an adventure. They will have, you know, similar stock characters, the goody, the baddie, you know, the dame, the comic, all that sort of stuff. But for you, if you can pick one, which is your favourite pantomime?
It is those two I mentioned earlier on, Jack and the Beanstalk and Aladdin. I absolutely love them, possibly because Aladdin was my first pantomime and Jack and the Beanstalk was my third pantomime. But they are pantos that I absolutely love. And don't get me wrong, I love Peter Pan. I love Beauty and the Beast, which we did last year. That was the first time I'd ever been part of that a show, Beauty and the Beast show. I love that. But Jack and the Beanstalk and Aladdin, they are traditional fairy stories. Whilst they get a modern treatment, they're stories that everybody knows so well. And I love them. And I've had such fun doing them in the past, you know. I think my last Aladdin was just the best experience ever. It was such fun. On stage, off stage, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Are there any pantos that you've seen or that you haven't done that you'd like to do?
I'd like to do Mother Goose, particularly as a dame, because that's a tale of great morality, about selfishness, and it's a great story. I remember watching Humpty Dumpty as a child. You don't see Humpty Dumpty or Puss in Boots anymore. Those were great stories, and I don't know if you've noticed, if you look around the websites that list all the pantomimes in the UK, we're kind of coming down now to maybe 6 themes which reoccur every single year, and that's why I was glad to see Beauty and the Beast added last year. That was the first time it had been done in the Grand as a pantomime. The Disney tour had been there some years ago, so that's kind of, otherwise it was just Snow White, Aladdin, Jack and the Beanstalk, Peter Pan, Cinderella, which are popular stories coming back year after year.
You've had so many highlights in your career, in not just in panto, but in radio and Swansea winning a game here and there, maybe. I don't. But I think one of the biggest highlights has to be going in to collect your MBE. What was that like?
Initially, I thought it was a letter from the taxman. I wouldn't open it because it had Honour Majesty Service on it. I thought, I'm not touching them. I don't owe them a penny. Why are they hassling me? This is wrong. It was very, very special. And for me, brought up a Welsh working class boy, from a terrace in a place called Plas Mal, which overlooks the beautiful stadium where the Swans play. But that, to all of a sudden be there in Buckingham Palace, which I'd only seen from outside the gates, and going through those gates was quite an experience. And what was lovely about it was dear Vicky Michelle. Vicky was awarded the MBE in the same honours list as me. It was the birthdays honours list, and as soon as it was announced, we talked on the phone, but then we didn't know that we would both be there on the same day, which was lovely. And in I went, and the first person I saw in Buckingham Palace was Vicky Michelle. So we kind of hung around with each other for the day. We went to the same pre-awards room, but then hearing your name called out and why you were there is quite a humbling experience. And the old Queen, bless her, she was She wasn't a young woman at that point, but she was a remarkable, of remarkable stamina, and she knew everything. And obviously, someone had told her and had briefed her, but she remembered everything. You know, there was no shouting line, line. She knew exactly. You know, and that was quite a remarkable experience. And I met a young man there. Vicky and I, we met a guy who's the Sky Royal correspondent, who was there being honoured for some of the work he did in the Territorial Army, and he introduced us to a young man who was getting, I think, the Military Cross for bravery in Afghanistan, and he'd run 400 metres, which is the full length of a running track, under fire from the Taliban, and he went to get a truck and drove the truck under fire to rescue his regiment, or his unit rather, and 4 Afghan national police officers, and he saved their lives. And he was last up that day, and the Queen spent the most time talking to him, and rightly so. And I sought him out when you go out into the courtyard afterwards to have photographs taken. I wanted my family, my wife, my son, my daughter, to meet him and to be able to tell his story to others.
You're a humble man. It's clear that that's an important part of your life as well. And the chaplaincy continues, I think, as well, doesn't it? Starting, we started with that in Bible college, and that's been an important thread in your whole life, and your faith is really important to you.
Yeah, it is. I did stand down last year as chaplain because I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. That's been a story in recent weeks, all the way through Beauty and the Beast. I continued my cancer treatment. On day offs, the cast said, "Oh, we had a great time yesterday. We went down the Mumbles, we went to Gower, we went to Joe's Ice Cream, which is the best ice cream in the country." And what did you do, Kev? Oh, I had 1 or 2 things to do. I was in the oncology unit getting my treatment, my immunotherapy. But since then, I've lost 5 stone in weight by choice, and they decided, having initially thought that they couldn't operate because there were secondaries on my lungs. Those secondaries had cleared because of the treatment, so they were able to remove my kidney. And the scans I've had since surgery have shown me to be cancer-free. There is no signs of cancer in my body. So whilst I'm just continuing the treatment through until the end of the cycle, I'm now cancer-free. So I just had to focus on that rather than sorting everybody out. So that's the one thing I did step back from. But it's still an important thing. And faith, friends and family were the most important people in helping me through that period of my life.
That is such fabulous news, and that obviously means that you are fit, healthy and raring to go for
I am.
Beanstalk. How are you excited about that?
I'm going to climb that beanstalk. I don't need any digital technology. I will climb a physical beanstalk. No, I'm looking forward to it, and it's going to be another digital panto, and that's what Imagine have brought to the panto in the Grand. They've brought this digital technology. So Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella were both digital sets. I mean, I loved it. A little thing when the kind of the baddie set the castle on fire in Beauty and the Beast, you could actually see flames on the digital screens, and the audiences, they love it. In fact, where was I yesterday? I was somewhere yesterday, and we're weeks after panto now, and somebody was, I was down for a walk with my wife and grandson along the seafront, and somebody came on to us to talk about the panto and say how much they had enjoyed it, particularly the digital set.
Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and audiences will be turning up in large numbers again at the Swansea Grand this Christmas to see Kev Johns MBE. Kev, thank you so much for talking to us.
Bless you, mate. It's been a real joy to talk to you, and we wish you well.
Thank you so much. Now, before we finish, we're going to answer another of your questions, and question that we get an awful lot, actually, from people who listen to the podcast is, how on earth do you get involved in the industry? And more specifically, how do you get involved working backstage? Well, here with the answer is Imagine's joint CEO, Sarah Bowden.
Well, I guess there's 2 sides to this, really. There's those people who are really experienced in the industry, work regularly backstage in productions, and the easiest way to do that is just to contact us. drop us an email, have a look on our website, let us know you're available. We'd love to hear from you, and everybody is welcome. For those people who don't regularly work backstage in a pantomime but really want to start to get involved, there's lots of ways that you can do that. You can work regularly at your local venue, maybe in the front of house, or start to train backstage. There's college courses that you can do of all sorts of different levels, and there's also loads of amateur theatre in the area. Remember, we all had to start somewhere, and in fact, Steve and I both started our training and our understanding of theatre via the amateur theatre route. That's exactly where we started and exactly what allowed us to become the people that we are today. So loads and loads of different routes that you can get involved in theatre across the board, as well as pantomime. As we always say, we don't mind where you see a panto, just see one, because it's such a wonderful Christmas tradition. And if you get to be involved like we are, all the better. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Sarah, and that's it for another episode, I'm afraid. Don't forget to keep your questions coming in, and make sure you join me, Martin Ballard, next time for episode 74, when I'll be catching up with the theatre impresario, joint CEO of Trafalgar Entertainment, Dame Rosemary Squire, and the CEO of Trafalgar Theatres, Helen Enright.
Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Just Imagine, the podcast series from Imagine Theatre. And you can find out more by going to www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.